Okay. Ooh, look at that lag. I might need to close some tabs. Might need to close some tabs for a minute. All right. Here we go. Is that a little less laggy? Maybe. Perhaps. Maybe I need to stop that. And then my computer will have more time to... Yes. Okay. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Today's Weather Tonight. Here, as always, I am your comedian / meteorologist, Cloud Hudson, and I will be bringing you tonight's top 5 stories. All right. And that would be weather under my definition. It's included. All the vibes are included in weather. Okay. So let's just start out. Today is a Venus Cazimi in Gemini. Just start out with a little... There we go. There's a little Venus Cazimi sun in Gemini ditty for you there. How is everyone doing tonight? I hope we're all well. I know it is a weird time out there. It's a weird time to be alive. I do try to keep it on the positive note on this channel, but it has been, a time for me personally. I'll just be vulnerable. It's been a time for me to reflect upon my shadow side and what type of streams of energy I allow into my presence, and a time to reflect on why I feel comfortable with, let's just say, harmful streams of energy. It's quite an interesting opportunity for reflection, to have your patterns repeated by you. Have your patterns repeated by you, to make the same happy little accidents, as Bob Ross would say, and see how they go. So yeah, let's with that, I would say thanks for giving me a little bit of a break. I had 2 days off because there was just a lot of work I needed to do internally and on myself, and also just in the world I had a lot of work to do, like occupation work. So that takes a while as well. So let's go ahead and get started with talking about what we missed recently, which was obviously Kilauea erupted. Of course, I have to take a day off the day that there's huge news because seems like whatever drives the huge news in the vibe world is also driving my craziness. So where did I want to look? Okay. Do they have a Kilauea? Yes. So Mount Kilauea actually started an eruption on June 3rd, a series of fissure eruptions. Pu'ukoe'i, it's between the 1971 and 1974 lava flow eruption areas just to the southwest of the South Caldera region. Obviously, Pele needed to make himself known. Make himself known. That's funny. Here's a picture of the earthquakes that surrounded that eruption. This is the type of activity that they had been watching for months. This is a picture of Kilauea erupting and the Milky Way in the background, as seen from the Keck observatories on Mauna Kea tonight. And there's a really good piece about the colonialism of telescopes that I will share to my YouTube community page by a doctor of astrophysics who is also a really good YouTube essayist. I don't remember her name though. Off the top of my head, but I'm going to link her video essay in the description because it actually deals with the Mauna Kea and Keck observatory areas. She did some research there and has a lot to say about the way that scientific inquiry is used for colonial violence. All right. Anyway, that is erupting right now. Well, it was erupting on Monday, and then has recently been downgraded. The Kilauea eruption has recently been termed that it is halted. It stopped today, I believe, on the 4th. But yeah, it started like Sunday night, Monday morning. Big old fissure eruption out of nowhere. So that is exciting. Let's see. Canalone in central Philippines had a new eruptive phase today. Here's a great image of the towering pillar of ash and gas from Punched the Lies at X.com. Pillar of ash and gas, ingested air, and other ejecta rose from the crater today. So that would be a dense ash plume, dilute pyroclastic flows caused by a collapse of either eruption column or crater rim, or both phenomena. Pumice and ash flow traveled at least 2 to 3 kilometers from atop the summit, racing over the south and southeastern flank, detecting in the thermal and IP cameras. The event lasted about 6 minutes. Still very exciting. Since we have only in the area we've mainly seen activity out of Java and Sumatra in Indonesia, and of course Lewitobi and Mount Lewotolo. But again, this is a very active region. Mount Dukono, also in that Oceania area, continues to erupt. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, there's a summary of what I just said about Kilauea. The earthquake swarm and ground deformation increased about 5 local time. It's uncertain if this will, yeah, and it did lead to an eruption. Seismic unrest sank again at 10:30 p.m. And then at 12:30 a.m. was when magma propagated across the rift zone area. And this has caused state park, national park closures in the area. Thankfully, because unfortunately, not everybody closes the area near an active volcano anymore. You know what I'm talking about? I'm talking about Reykjanes. Because this is the scene up there. Looks like a not good time. If this was the set of a movie, if this was the background of a movie, you could probably tell what's happening in the plot right now would be some sort of evil. This is an evil looking scene. Not that volcanoes are inherently evil, but it doesn't look like a place to go hang out. You know? Doesn't look like you want to breathe that air or soak up those vibes very much. You might be very intrigued by what it looks like. And yes, it's fascinating to watch these cameras. But yeah, staring at the blood and guts of the earth oozing out, not a good vibe, I'd say. So why then is the Blue Lagoon open again? I don't know. I guess people really want to soak in those volcanic ash fumes and sulfate molecules. The effusive eruption at the site continues at stable levels. 2 main cinder cones dominate activity. Fresh and molten pyroclasts have been continuing to eject from edifices, resulting in continuous spattering. That's our Monday the 3rd update. Let's check out what we've got for the 4th. Although the eruption has halted at Kilauea, the degassing continues. So that is a good sign that it's not going to continue to erupt. If there is still area for gas to escape and there's no magma making itself known as lava, then you know that implies that there is an area that it could be erupting from, but the only thing we're having is degassing. Lava flows were sluggish between 11 and noon, and it stopped at its advance around 12:30 local time. However, elevated volcanic gas emissions persist. That is not a great thing to breathe. Over the past 8 hours, all seismic activity has been concentrated near Mauna Kea, and the western edge of a newly formed crack system of this eruption. Let's see. Fuego continues its volcanic ash emissions. Discrete volcanic activity. Volcanic plume that rose to about 21,000 feet. I'm sorry. No volcanic ash observed in Ecuador, either from Sangay or Reventador. Peru, Salamanca continues to emit ash till flight level 250. And Mount Ibu in Indonesia and Lewatobi on Flores continue their interruptions and low-level volcanic ash emissions. Let's see. Volcanic ash observed on webcam at Merapi. That is continuing to go off as well. So, exciting, volcanic day. That means that we're probably going to have some fun earthquakes to look at. So let's go ahead and check that out. All right. I'm going to start in Hawaii today because, of course. So we see what the stack looks like here. There's quite a few surface as we zoom out, we see that Hawaii is in the big boy numbers. Hawaii, do you see Hawaii's stack of quake incidents? That is the biggest stack on the planet right now, is the activity going on in Hawaii. And of course, because it's going along with Kilauea actually erupting. A lot of those are deeper, but some of them are also surface, like all the ones you see from yesterday in blue. Those are definitely surface quakes, whereas some of these deeper ones are the more recent ones because it's back to normal activity now. We had some pretty deep ones and some very shallow ones, and now we are back to our average middle of the road kind of depth of eruption. Now, with that, I will say that the other hotspots have been pretty active as well. It's so hard to see all of these earthquakes when I have so many turned on. Let's go to 3s and over. Looking at 3.0s and over, we've got 3.7 and 3.9 out here on the Aleutian Islands, a 4.2 and a 4.2 and a 4.2. 3 evenly spaced 4.2s here, radiating out from like the Kuril Islands. The is this where Mount Abaco is? I think. The Kamchatka Peninsula, that's all radiating outwards. And then, of course, in Alaska, pay no attention to those Hawaiian quakes because some of those are lies, except for our more recent, not this one, over here in Vancouver Island, we just had a 3.0 yesterday. We had a 3.0 at 10 kilometers depth out on Vancouver Island. We had a 3.3 as we're getting here into Fairbanks, Alaska. And what's this 4.9 from? A 4.9 up here in Canada was on June 2nd. So that is also pretty recent. As we look at the United States, and obviously there were a ton of lower magnitude earthquakes in this area, like a lot of lower magnitude earthquakes, so much that it's hard to read this map very often. So I take them out of the tremor zone. Let's look at 2 and aboves. Because as we work our way down into the United States continental area, we see the diffusion of the energy that is bringing along these quakes. It's being dissipated out into many different fracture zones, so it doesn't attenuate. It doesn't collect and get all punchy, because we are just going in so many different directions. We being the energy that might cause massive fissures to be able to move. That energy is not attenuating very well because there's so many different paths to choose. And that is actually the way that you can bring down how you can stop a speeding bullet is give it many, many, many paths to go down. And that's what's happening here in the US. We do have West Texas quakes out the wazoo, as well as some Central Texas quakes. We've also got some 1s and 2s scattered throughout the country, the eastern half of the country. So Oklahoma, kind of normal to see at this point, kind of normal to see earthquakes there. And a 2.0 and a 1.4 here in the New Madrid seismic zone is not shocking at all. This 1.4 is right there, located right there in the town of New Madrid, right on the actual, this little river bend, this bend in the Mississippi, that's the town of New Madrid. So that is right there. The 2.0 was older. This 2.2 in North Georgia was also at 13 kilometers depth. The Missouri ones were at 8 and 9. We also have a Ohio quake, a 2.6 up here near Lake Erie, and a 1.6 over here in northern Jersey. Let's see. Oh, my date went away. Hold on. Trying to get these. Thank you. More activity in Puerto Rico as always. I don't know if my data's not loading or if we just really didn't have any big eruptions. Oh, there we go. Data wasn't loading. I was going to say we did have some typical cluster of 3s and 4s going into Mexico's southern coast here in the Guerrero Coast area. They just had a big presidential election down there. Not too earth-shaking, though. Actually, it is pretty earth-shaking because they elected a woman president before the United States did. That's cool. I guess they have cooler women down there. But these are moderately deep and fairly recent as well. Out here on the coast, out here in the middle of the Pacific, we've got 4.2 at 10 kilometers depth. And then just your regular old Chilean earthquakes, a 4.3, 4.3, and a 4.7 at a pretty deep depth of 126 kilometers depth. And then what do we have here? But we are getting more oceanic quakes now, both surface 5 and deep 4.8. That is the signature that we saw starting to rock around the world from the deep quake we saw over in Tonga the other day, 5.5 here on the East Argentinian Rise. Let's see. As we come over to the Western Pacific, we see some upper level 4s making their way through here. We also, this keeps making me double click on stuff. We also see some decently deep quakes coming out of our wave-shaped plate boundary area again. This is where we're seeing some over 5.0 quakes, like a surface 5.7, stacked with a deeper 4.9. No, that's not the surface. The surface was the 4.9. The 5.7 was at 33 kilometers. And looks like we've got another stack here. That is cluster of 4, upper 4, lower 5 strength earthquakes here. And those are getting pretty deep as well. Let's see. Yeah, 257 kilometers. That is a pretty deep one. We also had an Australian quake, another 2.4 near Perth, 4.2 in Indonesia. As we make our way into the Eurasian continent, we had a 4.3 up in Russia, a 4.6 here in, that is in Western China. We got a 4.4 here in the China-Kyrgyzstan border region. Or is that the Kazakhstan border region? I can't ever tell. 4.0, a 4.5, 4.5, and 4.4 here in very far Western China. Then also a 4.6 here off the coast of Pakistan. Pakistan also going through a heat wave right now. So I know a lot of people are flocking to the beach. Maybe there's so many people flocking to the beach that the beach just got really heavy and it sank a little bit. No, that's my little joke, but I told you I was a comedian. 3.7, 3.6, and 4.9 here in the same area that we saw some disturbance last week. Then, of course, our Greece complex. I mean, when you take it down to 3s, there are many areas for this momentum to go. So, of course, there are many, many, many tremors all over the place. There's also a 4.1 here in Switzerland, a 4.1 at 1 kilometer's depth. So that's got to be exciting if you're out there. There was also a mid-Atlantic ridge quake, surface 5.7 at 0 kilometers depth. and also a northern Atlantic 4.3 at 10 kilometers depth. Now that is right above Iceland on that North American and Eurasian continent plate boundary. So we'll see what's happening there. Let's actually take a look at what's happening there. Let's see if the earthquakes in if the Icelandic Met Office has some earthquake data we can look at. Eruption going on, gas pollution, orange alert. Okay, Iceland is having some bad weather right now. Orange alert and yellow alert for the entire island. All 4 regions are under alerts. There are, for weather, let's see. They're looking at a snowstorm in the western or the eastern and northern portions, and a less severe snowstorm in the yellow warned portions, but that is high winds and snow look to be what we are looking for there. That's interesting. We'll get into the weather forecast in a second, but it looks like let's look at North Atlantic. Do they show that? They don't show that upper earthquake on there, but quite a bit of earthquake activity there, just not as much as you would see right before a eruption. Thankfully, the volcanic gases are blowing offshore again. I'm sure that is... It would really suck if you got a snowstorm made out of volcanic ash. So that's good if it's pointed away. Let's hope it stays that way. But yeah, also rough weather conditions can make it harder for them to measure ground deformation. So I don't think I've been to that website in a while, but it's this one. Showing us our GPS data of ground inflation and deflation since the March eruption into the May eruption. The March eruption is the one that lasted for a full month, though, and you can see where it really let off pressure. Like, it let off pressure at the beginning of the March, and then right around the turn of it becoming April, we started to inflate again. And the rate of, by that, I think that the rate of lava flowing out was less than the rate of lava flowing in. So the ground swelled. And then around May 14th, we saw another eruption start, which we are currently undergoing. Wait, did I get that date right? Was that May like 20 something? I forget what the day started. Was it like last week or 2 weeks ago? It's all blending together, honestly. Good thing there are some charts keeping track of this. Yeah, so while we're on this view, let's go ahead and take a look at our local satellite, because looking at CONUS, the continental US view of the GOES 18 satellite, look at this weirdness that we've got going on, springing up from Mexico through Minnesota. We've got a weird area of spawn points. This is what I call spawn points. This is where there's one area where, as the air mass moves over it, it starts to become a storm. There are just conditions correct on the ground to spur some convection. And you can kind of see the surface level winds flowing in and fueling this. But take a look at the weird rotation associated with this, because it almost looks like this has clockwise rotation on it. That might be an outflow boundary. Like the outflow is going clockwise, but it looks like we're not spinning counterclockwise. Like, if we're spinning counterclockwise in the middle, it's very loosely. And then we've got this sweeping frontal air mass here. The divergence aloft. Do you see where winds aloft here are going southwest? Winds aloft here are going like due north, and winds aloft here are going northeast. This is a confluent zone. This is a stretching and pulling zone. And when you stretch, it brings things up from the bottom. Like if you had, imagine this piece of paper is a plane of the same conditions in the air. When there is stretching aloft, you pull up the air from the bottom. You know what I mean? It's like that, only instead of one sheet of paper, there are infinitely many sheets, slices of the air column. When you pull up from the bottom, it stretches it up. Anyway, divergence aloft is what we are seeing, among other things, including inflow from the Gulf of Mexico that's really nice and hot and wet, as well as some really fast sweeping winds sweeping around this hot heat dome that's setting up in the western United States. We've also got, this is honestly partially coming from polar-ish air masses, and this is coming from very tropical air masses. So we're getting the convergence of those two air masses again, which always spurs some crazy weather. This looks a little bit more cyclonic than this does. I don't know what the hell this is. I really, this is just a weird looking storm. That's all I'm going to say about it. Let's take a look at that on Radar Omega. Oh, I was looking at it on satellite here too. Because if you watch, I'm going to close that. Oh. So it doesn't keep loading it. You see, we have a mesoscale discussion warning about potential flash flooding here in Oklahoma, Arkansas area. Look at this. The center of the circulation looks to be going that way, but then the outside of the clouds look to be going that way. It's probably an optical illusion, but do you see what I mean? These spurring out clouds, the ring of clouds around the edge, like the mane, the lion's mane. Now it's starting to look a little more cyclonic. But really at the beginning of this, you see some weird clockwise rotation, which you usually see clockwise rotation with a high pressure system. See? But you can see that it is trying to go counterclockwise as well. Like on the two different levels, there are two different vorticity, like rotation directions. Two different vorticity values. There's vorticity shear. It's very weird. Let's take a look at it on radar though. So on radar, it doesn't look like it's organizing itself very well because that's just a crazy setup. This storm in Oklahoma City, though, I can definitely understand why they've got a severe thunderstorm warning with it, as well as thunderstorm watches and a flash flood warning. No active tornado warnings right now. That is a very good thing. Because there are still, you see all these states down here, these are still counties that have a lot of power outages. So unfortunately, people who have power outages are dealing with more severe weather setting up right on top of them, especially in southern Mississippi and Louisiana. Severe thunderstorm watch likely. here in this area, and there's a severe thunderstorm watch in most areas there. We've also got special weather statements up in Fredonia, Chervale, Canny, Independence. Really southeastern Kansas, northeastern Oklahoma. We're looking at some nasty little isolated thunder showers here. Some isolated, I wouldn't call this a supercell, but isolated complex areas of convection. Because this isn't one big cell. It is one big storm, but it's not really. It's kind of trying to organize itself. As we move through Wichita and Eureka, Kansas, it starts to get a little bit more organized. Like when it was by itself there in Great Bend, you could see it got really high reflectivity values. But now as it gets linked up with all these other individual storms, it's very hard to organize into a nice counterclockwise moving storm or a mesoscale convective system that fits an efficient engine model. But it is organizing into a bit more of a line, a bit more of a squall line there. So quasi-linear convective system, possible. Definitely that's what we got going out here in moving into Baton Rouge now, or just moved through Baton Rouge and Jackson, Mississippi. This big, nasty line out here. And then the rain-cooled air behind it, creating its own little terrarium of convection. Lots of scattered thunderstorms throughout the mid-Atlantic and South today as we move into the Midwest and northern Midwest. I don't even know what to call. This is the old Midwest and this is the new Midwest, but looking like a lot of linear storms here, but fortunately they are sweeping forward with this cold front. There's not a lot. Unfortunately, there's been some real stationary wind setups here where we've had the same wind directions at the same levels for a few days, so we just keep churning up the same recipe. But I think that soon we might have a change up going. We also have a lot higher chance of tropical systems forming now that we are getting into June. Unfortunately, that is a big risk because last year's hurricane season was underwhelming to say the least. Last year's hurricane season was underwhelming, and that means that it didn't use up all the available heat in the ocean, both heat and moisture heat. I'll explain the difference another time, but there's a lot of available energy in the Atlantic Ocean right now, and especially in the Gulf of Mexico, in the form of heat that we just have a bunch of leftovers. It's like the fridge is full of leftovers, and someone's going to go in there and cook up a storm with them. Let's go now to... Oh, here's a good, fun little story. I want to take a look at this great video of a double rainbow being struck by lightning, by a cross of lightning. That is a gorgeous, gorgeous cloud to cloud and cloud to ground strike captured at the same time as a rainbow. So that should be a good reminder for you all that rainbow weather is also the same weather that creates lightning. So don't be out standing in your field too often. Might get struck by this holy cross. Look at that. Flaming cross of lightning. Wow. Wow. That is really cool. And that was caught on May 30th. So, next weather is our Schumann resonances. And woo, buddy, check out all that energy that got discharged today. That Venus Cazimi was strong. The day before, we really took a little break. We really took a respite on the 3rd. But the 4th, look at all that big whiteout conditions that stretched all the way to mode 4 in the peak of it, mostly hovering around mode 1 and 2 here, but also a big vertical strike around 17, 18 today. And as we move into the 5th, it doesn't look like we are still in that storm phase, but we are definitely bracing for impact from some other space weather. So if this is decharging whatever struck us last week, that makes a lot of sense. Take a look at our frequencies. That big storm knocked the frequencies down a decent amount, but we are right back up there where we started before. And let's take a look at the amplitude, the power index that we got. Oh yeah, we got some decent power out of that. Not the biggest storm ever, but definitely some really intense storming going on. Mode 4 peaking out at 15. That's where mode 1 usually sits and when it's peaking. So really, there was a lot of energy to download and process and transmute today. So I hope that we got our grounding in. I hope that we all had a good chance to go sit in the sun or touch a pretty rock or touch grass in some way, shape, or form. Now, let's catch up on our solar weather. There's still a little bit of debate in the space weather community about whether this type 3 angular halo, potential full halo CME was launched by the X flare that happened at the same time, or whether this was a rear coronal mass ejection and there just happened to be an Earth facing X flare at the same time. That jury's still out on that. On the 2nd, we had 5 different coronal mass ejections, and on the 3rd, we had 5 again. Nobody looking like a complete halo, though. And on the 4th, we had 4 of them. Let's see if any of these looked Earth direct or strong or anything. Not really. Not that one, at least. Lasted a while, but not looking too exciting. Check out our solar flares, though. All right, and our solar flares are back to flaring in the M-class range after we had those X-class flares the other day. Maybe we'll get another X-class flare before 3679 is all gone, but thankfully it's still giving us some nice M-class flares that might give a little bit of hope to aurora chasers out there. But speaking of aurora chasers, I've seen headlines come up about aurora possibilities, and I just don't. It's the same sunspot group, but we haven't seen a storm or a releasing of energy comparable to the storm where we saw some really southern good latitudes of amazing northern lights back in May. We haven't seen any storms like that since, though the number of sunspots in 3697 has increased, and it just keeps going up in complexity. Let's actually take a look at what that sunspot region looks like right now. 3697 looks gnarly. Look at that. This is like a little horse that's riding the moon. Do you see it? It looks like a horse, maybe chasing something. It part of a chariot team, perhaps. I don't know. But or it looks like nasty bug guts or something. it's uh it's quite a volatile looking system. It looks really complex with a lot of nodes for energy exchanges. There's probably a lot of opportunities going back and forth between the main strongest regions and these little mini regions of development to discharge their charges together. So just a lot of potential for this, even though it doesn't quite to be look to be reaching as strong of absolute magnitudes either way as it did on its first trip around. Let's see. Oh yeah, I was gonna look. We did have the M flares that caused some radio blackouts. We had a G1 minor geomagnetic storm early today. We reached a KP index of 5. So let's actually take a look at our KP index. What have we? Yeah, late on the 3rd, early on the 4th, we got to a 5. Let's look at Auroral Home. Oh, and sorry, I did go live a little bit early tonight, just because I am very sleepy and I need a lot of rest. There's a lot of things I've been processing in my dreams lately that it's just very hard to integrate, and it takes a lot of rest to do so. Okay, so looking pretty calm on our solar flare front. Solar flare. From our space weather looks pretty calm, unfortunately, for aurora chasers. The interplanetary magnetic field strength may be pretty high at the poles, but we did just decharge our bands a lot. Last night might have been better for you. Let's see. It is a Mars day and a Jupiter hour, and it is actually about to be a Mars hour in 1 minute. I think, yeah, we started during a Jupiter hour. We are looking at the sun Cazimi, or when a inner planet makes these sun conjunctions, when the planet applied to the sun rather than the sun transiting over it, we call this Cazimi. This is the Venus Cazimi in Gemini at 14 degrees Gemini. Now Venus is at 15 degrees Gemini. This was roughly square to our Saturn in Pisces. So whatever Pisces and Gemini themes come out in your life, I personally have 8th house Gemini and a 4th house Pisces. So these things were reflecting on my relationship with home and other people's resources and other people's expectations and dependences on you, and also just how you relate to the world. It's not fun. I don't think it's that fun to have a Venus Cazimi in your 8th house, but it's also something, it's like homework. You don't grow without it, but you gotta do it. We just also had Mercury ingress into Gemini conjunct Jupiter, and that means that we currently have a 4-planet stellium in Gemini, making this the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is the sixth sign in a row since the sun was in Capricorn, where we have had a stellium of planets while the sun is in that sign. So that is kind of a really exciting illustration of what all the potentials of all the signs mean. Everything from this Capricorn season to this Gemini season has been really heavy on the sign the sun is transiting through. So that should give us some guidance, I think, about what each sign is supposed to be doing for you in your life. We do have an exalted moon in Taurus. She's very happy in the sign of Taurus, but is also conjunct Uranus, which is not, which is Uranus and Taurus has definitely been a time. It's been there since about May 15th of 2018. And I think that we really have seen global warming set in, or we've seen the effects of climate change really set in the material world, not just people, scientists know about it. It's just also materially happening. This has been the birth and the follow through of a lot of material happenings again. And as soon as the moon departs Taurus, this will be the first time that Uranus is the sole planet in Taurus since over a year and a half. Since like Jupiter was in there for a year and a half. So yeah, this will be our first single Uranus in Taurus in a while. So we'll have to keep an eye out for what happens there. Okay. What else do we have? Nothing else really popping out at me at the moment. Yeah, now it's a Mars day and a Mars hour currently. Mars in Aries is about to move out of Aries and into Taurus, where it is much more ploddingly and deliberately applied, but you can get a lot of hard work done through that kind of energy. So that's a good thing as well. Okay, I would like to go ahead and get into a little card reading. If I may do that. I just love this labradorite piece. It's so beautiful. I don't know if you can see it very well, but that flash is just so gorgeous. Beautiful. All right. So, I know it came in for me, but what is coming in for the universe? For the what is coming into our solar system? What's the energy coming in from the larger galaxy and universe for our solar system right now? And more specifically, the people on Earth. All right. I've got that one popped out when I said the people of Earth. 7 of Pentacles upright. Thank you very much. 7 of Pentacles upright. You are not done yet, but you're already starting to reap the benefits of your hard work. It's funny. I say reap the benefits. I felt like a reaper today. I recently got a new gardening tool, and there is actually a gardening tool on this card. It's like one of the only maintain your fields and your crop, because he's standing on either a shovel or a hoe or knife. I don't know quite which garden tool this is supposed to be, but I got a new garden tool myself today, and I was able to use it and for harvesting things, and that was really awesome. So it is a good feeling. It's also a little dangerous to be able to harvest things. There's a bit of destruction in it, but the whole reason you grew it was to be able to harvest. So somewhere in there, there is a destruction, but there's an abundance in the destruction as well. There's some sort of cash money, gold prizes. But it's not quite enough yet. You are still the worker. You are still the guy out in his field actually sowing the stuff and reaping the stuff himself. You're not the king yet. You're definitely doing the work yourself right now in the material world, in the perhaps in the financial world. Perhaps you're finally reaping some of your hard-earned benefits or rewards. Maybe some seeds you planted metaphorically are coming up right now. But yeah, things are panning out. It's not exactly all the way done yet, but we are slowly making our way towards having material abundance there. Cool. Let's check out what the liminal space has to say with that. I don't know. I just got a feeling that maybe I shouldn't do the liminal space today. I don't think this has a message for us today. Don't ask me how I know. I don't know. I just feel it. Okay. Let's do... Yeah. Let's get a little message from our positivity deck. That's the one that I keep with the selenite, of course. Right. Nothing is more important than that I feel good. That's a hard card to hear. Looks like a illustration of maybe a mimosa tree on it. Don't do anything that you don't really want to do. Keep yourself in a good place. Keep yourself in a place of feeling good. Reach for the thought that feels better and watch what happens. Interesting illustrator's note on this. There are two depictions here, I think. Two depictions of the parts that make you feel good, not the part that make you feel bad. Perhaps the lesson here is that just like everything in life, you can reach for the part that feels good to eat and leave the part that doesn't feel good to eat. Like, you wouldn't get mad at a pumpkin because you tried to gnaw on the bare stem instead of eating the fruits the proper way. You shouldn't get mad at life because you haven't been able to reap your fruits out of a particular thing that you planted. Just got to remember, wait, why did I plant that again? Oh yeah, this is the part I wanted to use out of that. That's good. So very interesting visuals there today. So, I hope this hasn't been too early for y'all. I'm sorry if it was a little bit of an early broadcast. I'm usually a night owl, but I've got to get back to resting. After the big Schumann download yesterday, I am pretty sure that I need to rest and reflect in order to correctly harvest the medicine of the plants that have blossomed in my life over this weekend. Yeah. I love you guys very much. say hi in the comments if you are my regulars. I do miss talking to you guys. I just I'm a little out of sync with time right now, so I hope that y'all are doing all right throughout this big energy download, this big Venus Cazimi energy. Oh yeah, I wanted to mention Venus Cazimi. The last 2 times this happened were in the last time we had a Venus direct Cazimi in Gemini was June of 2016. And the last time we had a Gemini Cazimi retrograde was June of 2020. So think about what you were doing June of 2016 and June of 2020. I think for me this actually does have to do with gardening. Quite literally and quite obviously in the cards. June of 2016, I got into gardening and I learned a lot of stuff about nature that, like, for the first time, I'd focused on a lot of atmospheric sciences and not a lot of earth sciences. So that's when my love of earth sciences started to bloom. Then in June of 2020, I started to see beneficial harvest from somebody else's garden. And I realized, hey, I kind of wish that I was growing fruits in my own garden. And then I did that, and now I try to go out and work in the garden and in the forest every day that I can. Makes me feel really good to go walk barefoot in the woods and also to see the growth that each little plant can bring every time. So maybe I won't know what I've started right now until it comes to bear fruit, but I'm really optimistic about it. Okay. Well, I love you guys very much. I hope you have a great evening. Thanks for coming to another episode of Today's Weather Tonight. Goodbye.